Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's program. This is our latest installation of our Queeriosity Corner program. We do this on a quarterly basis, and I'm really excited to bring you all actually a little bit physically into the museum tonight. That's where I'm streaming from. I am Lee Pfeffer. I am the Manager of Museum Experience with the GLBT Historical Society. And before we get into tonight's program, I just have a few things that I'd like to tell you about in regards to the Society and a little bit about our work. I want to start off first by acknowledging that the GLBT Historical Society is based on Ohlone tribal land, and I invite any Indigenous folks with us today to make themselves known and visible in the chat and be recognized as we honor the contemporary and ancestral lives of America's Indigenous peoples. This event is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel and on our website. And if you're watching along with us live, we welcome your active participation in the chat. Let us know where you're streaming in from tonight. And we encourage you to post comments, observations, and questions for our participants. We're going to have a Q&A portion. And before I turn it over to our illustrious host for the evening, Ramon Silvestre, let me tell you a little bit about the Society if you're not familiar with our work already. Founded in 1985, the Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, Transgender, or GLBT Historical Society is recognized internationally as a leader in the field of LGBTQ public history. Our mission is to collect, preserve, exhibit, and make accessible to the public materials and knowledge to support and promote understanding of LGBTQ history, culture, and arts in all of their diversity. We have two centers of operation. We've got our GLBT Historical Society Museum located in the heart of the Castro, and we've been open since 2011, and we are open and welcoming people into the museum. And we also have the Dr. John P. DeCecco Archives and Research Center, which is in the Mid-Market District. Please check out our growing array of exhibitions, events, and archival resources online at our website, glbthistory.org. We have new things coming up there all the time, and we are constantly expanding all of our digital offerings. Finally, I want to thank all of our members and donors who truly make our work possible. If you're not already a card-carrying member of the GLBT Historical Society, I invite you to consider joining today. Members get a variety of cool perks, including free admission to the museum for yourself and a guest. You get a 20% discount on purchases both in the museum store and on our website, on our online store. And we're going to be having some fun stuff coming up for the holidays. And you also get access to special members-only events. You can learn more about how to become a member or other ways to give and support the Society by visiting glbthistory.org/join-give. You can follow the little link on the screen there. And that's what I've got in terms of introducing just a little bit about the Society. If this is your first time joining us for this program, this is a program that we do once a quarter, and it's an opportunity for us to kind of show off some of the really wonderful objects that we have in our collection, in our arts and artifacts collection. I like to think of it as a kind of queer storytelling show and tell. And so we are hosted, every one of these, by our museum registrar and curatorial specialist, Ramon Silvestre, who is an expert in material culture studies. And I'm not going to read his entire bio because he's going to tell you a little bit about himself, but he's very, very illustrious. He's done research and fieldwork and museum collection acquisitions in the Philippines and in Indonesia and in Borneo. And he is a GLBT Historical Society expert. Let's bring on Ramon. Hello.
Hi, everyone. So, as Lee, let me thank you again for your expertise in having to do a program, because I am just
You always sell yourself short with these.
Impossible without you. So this is our third installment in our Queeriosity Corner program. It's a as Lee mentioned, a quarterly series. And myself and the staff, along with Lee, will feature tonight our illustrious, I'm illustrious, I guess, but there are more illustrious people in my panel. So before anything else, the content of our Queeriosity Corner tonight is more about the whole idea of gender fuck and the artists that were involved in this during the AIDS crisis. So I wanted to talk about a few things before we introduce our panel, and I hope I have everything before I forget. Let me pull out my cue cards here. If not, I'm gonna screw up. So let me just. So what we do is try to highlight our specific art and artifact collection, and tonight we are going to feature the artwork of both Jerome Caja and Doris Fish. And along with that, our speakers tonight are going to be the illustrious Miss Bob Davis. And shall we have everybody come in now, or shall we?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's bring everybody up as we introduce everyone. So we'll bring up Miss Bob Davis.
Miss Bob Davis,
the founder and director of the Louise Lawrence Transgender Archives in Vallejo, which is a wonderful. We frequently think of you as partner organization, and we're so happy to get to do all of these things with you. You also served in the 90s 2 terms on the board of directors with the society.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So welcome.
I still bear the scars.
You do. You still do.
Thank you so much for popping on with us tonight.
Thank you. I'm just delighted to be here.
So Miss Bob also just recently presented her talk on Glamour, Dragon, Death, HIV/AIDS in the Art of 3 Drag Queen Painters at the Archives, Museums and Special Collections Conference and Queering Memory in 2019 in Germany, in Berlin, and virtually at the University of Victoria's Moving Trans History Forward Conference in 2020, and also published an article based on the talk in Transgender Studies Quarterly earlier this year, and currently teaches music at the Napa Valley College, and also has been emeritus professor at City College. Am I correct, Bob, or am I wrong there?
No, that's true.
And then next on our panel, we're inviting Stephen Pope, and Anthony Chancello to join us.
Go.
Well, there. Hi, Anthony and Stephen.
Hello. Hello.
I have just recently worked with Anthony on an exhibit collaboration at the Anglem Trimble Gallery on Jerome Caja. Anthony is a Bay Area artist, curator, and filmmaker. Currently, he is directing a documentary feature film about Jerome, and also manages Jerome Caja's estate through the Jerome Project, which I invite you to look at online. He recently collaborated with us in the gallery at the Anglem Trimble Gallery. Anthony also works in independent film and TV's Sony's Venom, Netflix Series 8, and HBO's Link. So if you're familiar with that, I encourage you guys to all watch these.
I believe it's Sense8.
Yes.
What did I say? I'm sorry.
Series 8, no worries.
Sorry, Sense8. See, this is what happens when your eyesight is beginning to fail. Prior to this, he worked on cutting-edge films that fused animation with live action and natural-born killers, Tank Girl, Space Jam, and animated films, The Iron Giant, Osmosis Jones, Looney Tunes. He also has helped establish Warner Brothers feature animation division, where he worked as an art director, technical director, compositor, and animator. How's that for an illustrious panel? Moving on to Stephen Folk. Stephen Folk has a lot of interesting stories. So, Stephen
Mostly
Folk
about Anthony.
is a Bay Area artist, musician, and global traveler. Currently, he is an experimental synth pop band. Am I reading this right? Called Crumpled Tissue, and has been working.
Tissue.
So Crumpled
You have to say
Tissue.
Kiss you.
Tissue, and has been working as an advisor on the Jerome project since its inception in 2010. He recently helped produce the Jerome and Joan, a Late Night with Joan Jet Black in June of this year at the Minnesota Street Projects, which was part of their Juneteenth celebration. Stephen was a music director, program director, and DJ at several independent radio stations, both in Cleveland, Ohio, and San Francisco. He also co-founded the notorious, listen, I like that adjective, notorious club Hagen-Dazs in the Castro in the late 80s. So I am sure there is stories to be told. Currently, Stephen continues his 20-plus year career in the tourism industry, designing, training, and leading trips on all 7 continents. I'd like to know how you train through this continent, Stephen. He has walked across solo across North America, and followed years later in 2013 with a more than 3,000-mile hike from Gibraltar to Istanbul. He is currently planning his next major trek. I'm sorry, but I don't think I can do that trek right now. I'm just like, That's a lot of work. So, welcome you all to our little Queeriosity Corner, and I am so happy to have you all tonight. So,
Thanks
Lee?
for having us.
So shall we start with just a little bit of, I sort of prepared a small slideshow just to familiarize people about what we have in the collection, so we can quickly go through it, and then you guys can kind of, we'll go back to it later as we go through it. So the first few photographs are Jerome's work that we have at the archives. So Lee, the first 3, I think. This one is it's on a bingo card, right, Stephen? Anthony?
Yes.
And then the next one is okay, Lee, next one, please.
Sorry, 1 second. They're taking
Sorry,
taking a
fine.
little longer than usual.
No
There we
worries.
go.
And then
this.
and Anthony, you want to talk about this one?
Sure. Yeah. If you look
Sorry, I
close,
didn't mean to put you in the spot.
yeah, these are some dime store prints, fine art prints, and Jerome went in and kind of repurposed these, and he added little portraits that are painted on smashed bottle caps. So this is, the actual portraits that you see are Jerome's paintings, and then he also painted a phallus over the sword on the figure to the left. They're actually really sweet, really beautiful little paintings. And these were in the exhibition that we worked on together at Angle and Trimble Gallery. They were in Found, the Lost Art. And this is from David Benetti's collection. David Benetti was a famous art critic who passed away. And Gerard Koskovich, bless his heart, he helped secure these paintings and get them into your archives. So
Yes.
you guys have a really wonderful example of Jerome's kind of irreverent, provocative art in your collection.
And then I think I have a third one, Lee. And this is the Penniless Princess, is that right?
Yes, and this is also a self-portrait of one of Jerome's really good friends and drag sister, Adam Klein. And if you look close on this, you can see the princess. She's turning her pockets inside out, and she has no money. And this is a character that pops up in a lot of Jerome's paintings. It's Rena McDonald. So another lovely little treasure that I believe Gerard Koskovich owned this piece and donated.
Yeah, that's another. I think the first bingo card was given to us by Jerome himself, if I am correct. I'm not sure, but I think that's the story I've heard about that bingo card.
Right.
Then again, that was before me.
Lovely.
Anyway, and then this was, I took a shot of Anthony's back and my partner's back as well at the Jerome Caja exhibit that Anthony had curated, and it's an amazing show, and I wish that you had at least seen some of it, but I am sure there's going to be some showing sometime in the near future.
Yeah, Ramon, this show, that's the first of many. We're probably going to get this show to travel. And
that's great.
yeah, one of the things I loved about this show, it was really the first time that we got a chance to actually collaborate. Mm-hmm. And I just got to say hats off to you for digging through the archive and finding Jerome's art in the middle of a pandemic, because it was an honor to be able to just put this stuff on display. And really, this was the first show that actually exhibited the work in your collection, thanks to you.
Exactly. Well, thank you too. I mean, you've invited a number of collectors of Jerome's work, and I think it's a great way to show underrepresented queer artists that will never be shown unless we make an effort to do this sort of thing. So
yes,
I salute the work you all do, and I am hoping we can do this again.
Yeah.
So I think the next batch, Lee, is more for Miss Bob, and these are part of the Miss Bob Davis collection. So Miss Bob, I think I will let you take this.
This is a portrait
on this one.
Okay, this is a portrait of Ambisextrous, and I know the Historical Society sells a Ambisextrous postcard also. This is really pretty much what Ambi looked like. Doris Fish painted this. It's the thing I like about it particularly is it captures Ambi's sense of fantasy. She really had a fantasy life. Both she and Doris's roommate Tippy were avid doll collectors, and that's why I think why we see all the baby doll heads around Ambi's neck. Though of course I must say they always remind me of the skulls that the goddess Kali is wearing around her neck as she dances on Shiva's chest. So they kind of the necklace kind of cuts two ways for me. Do you have the diary section?
Yes, the next one I think is the diary section. This one.
When Ambi passed away, her husband Ed, whose last name evades me, gave me the painting and this page from Ambi's diary. This that's Ambi on top. Tippy in the middle, who was, as I mentioned, was Doris's roommate. At this time, Tippy was going by the name Misleading, and then there's a photograph of Ambi. And if you can read the text around the photo, or especially under the photo, it says, "This photo inspired a soon-to-be famous acrylic on canvas painting by Doris Fish." And so this is Doris's. This is, according to Ambi at least, this is the inspiration for that painting. Ambi made everything she touched into a little piece of art. I have a set list of hers, which is written in about 11 different colors for the different songs and what she intends to do and directions in them. And let's see what we have next.
I think, this is...
This is a faux Louis XIV, or is it Louis XVI table? The story behind this is rather long, and I don't mind taking the time. I hope you don't mind it either. There used to be a furniture store on Mission Street, about 19th, called Four Brothers, and they sold furniture that was all gilded. It looked like something you'd find either in a whorehouse or Trump Tower. It was all gold and glittery, and they went out of business. And a woman named Pam Miner, who was at that time the director of the San Francisco Art Commission's Costume Bank, found these parts of a table in the trash after they'd gone out of business, and she collected them. And she and at the costume bank, glued all of the gilt and not the gilt, but all the beads, the sequins, all of that is hot glued on by Pam and other people at the costume bank. She gave it to Tippy and I. And when Doris came back from Australia, now Doris was Australian and went to Australia pretty much every year for months to work on the gay Mardi Gras. She had a kind of job there waiting for her, designing floats and building floats. One year she made a float that looked just like her. It was called the Fishmobile, and it carried 12 people, including her mother. When Doris saw the front piece, her eyes lit up and she completely took it over from Tippy. It was Doris who turned it into a table. She took the front piece and the back piece, which was not connected, cut a scalloped top for the table, painted it a kind of a faux marble, and it was rickety as hell. Everything, most of the furniture I saw that Doris made was more like made for the stage than for the living room. It was not, it looked great, but don't treat it too harshly because it really wasn't made to stand. After Doris and Tippy both passed, the table fell to me. A man by the name of Bill Jones, who worked for the San Francisco Opera in the makeup area, rebuilt it. You can't tell. It looks just like it did when Doris made it, but the top's a little thicker. And so he gave him something to actually attach it to. So it's much more stable now. I had it in my home for years. But unfortunately, in the new place I've moved to in Vallejo, where we have the Louise Lawrence Transgender Archive, it broke my heart, but I didn't have room for it. So, and that's why now it's a part of the collection at the GLBT Historical Society. It's had a long, convoluted story.
I think it's the perfect story to have, and we are so, amazed by the collection you have, the pieces you've given us through the years. So it's amazing. It's found a home and it will stay at the Historical Society for years on end.
But as I keep moving to smaller apartments, you'll keep getting more and more things. So at least somebody will benefit from my increasing poverty. The other, The other thing I want to mention is this. There it is. This painting by Doris Fish, which is Doris there on the left, and on the right is Miss Abood, Danny Abood, who was another Australian friend of Doris's. And if Danny looks rather large, that's because Danny was over 7 foot tall. Doris was more like 5'8", 5'10". So Danny was literally a monster in drag. Tippy used to tell me stories that when turning tricks in Australia, if Danny didn't like the fees that she was paid, she simply beat up the trick. At 7'2", 7'4", sure, no problem, right? Apparently, she also would, if she saw someone she really, really wanted to be with, she would just grab them out of the car, open the door window, or drag them their way. So that's Doris Fish and Danny Abood.
Great. So Lee, I think, is that it for my photograph, my little slideshow? I think that's it, huh?
Yep.
Go ahead.
I think it would be really wonderful to, I know that Miss Bob and also Stephen and Anthony have some other images that they would like to show. And I think it would be really wonderful to, for anybody who's tuning in and isn't already familiar with the work of both of these artists, to kind of give a little bit of, behind the scenes look on them, and what does it mean to express gender fuck in art, and what these artists were doing, kind of dealing with a pandemic, that was affecting their communities through their art. I think it'd be really neat to look at some of those. So I have, whoever would like to go first, Ms. Bob or Stephen and Anthony, I'm happy to bring up some images that you want to show off. And then I will fade back into the background.
Cool. Maybe, why don't we pull up some images of Jerome Lee? And I think, this is probably the best introduction to Jerome and this kind of gender fuck skag drag.
Perfect. All right, I'll bring them up.
And, Stephen and I, we found these, and Lee, you can just kind of scrub through these. I think there's about 5 of them. We found these images just recently on Lewis Walden's Facebook page. Michael Blue and Lewis Walden, they were really responsible for kind of setting the stage for Jerome to really kind of step into his kind of spastic go-go dancing and really kind of show off his unique style of kind of gender fuck drag. And, Jerome always had this kind of really garish, messy makeup. He always had these little spangles on his forearms. This is a classic image of Jerome at Club Uranus dancing on one of the pedestals. And then that's Jerome in true form right there with his little torn fishnet stockings and stuff.
Right.
So, yeah, we can take that down now. This is a really good example of drag. And then Stephen and I also, we kind of selected some art just so that you can kind of see some examples of Jerome's gender fuck through some of his art. So Jerome designed a lot of his art to be held kind of in the palm of your hand. So, for example, this is a picture of Connie Krishna. This is a self-portrait of Jerome with demon eyes. These were talisman that Jerome made. This, for example, hung over his bed and watched over him while he slept. So again, it's a self-portrait of a character that Jerome dressed up in drag with a bald cap and marched in gay pride as Connie Krishna. And, Jerome also did a really kind of subtle form of gender fuck. It's not always kind of like in your face. So if you look at this lovely little painting, you'll see this little couple, but if you look really close, they both have little phalluses that they're kind of fondling and playing with each other. But coming from far away, it just looks like a lovely little Victorian little piece and this little couple. So a lot of Jerome's gender fuck stuff wasn't always like kind of in your face. You want to add anything to that?
Well, I'll add when we go into the hugging thing.
So here, I'm going to share one other thing. This is something very recent that we acquired in the Jerome Caja repository. And again, this is another example of like gender fuck where Jerome is taking the Mona Lisa and he's actually painting a portrait of himself on top of the Mona Lisa. And then if you look close, he didn't paint the eyes. He let the eyes of Mona Lisa come through. So again, this is another kind of very subtle form of really messing with and kind of fucking with gender.
And do the eyes follow you around the room as you walk?
Say it again?
Do the
The eyes follow you around the room as you walk?
Or
That's great.
even when you're not walking, even when you're not in the room, those eyes are still following you.
That painting too glows in the dark, so it's made with day glow paint.
That's great.
With this,
That is amazing.
yeah. Well,
Lee, when you were introducing this next segment, you were talking about gender fuckery and art in a pandemic. And the thing that I want to add about that and sort of tie into what Anthony had said about Lewis, who those photos, we just found on Facebook, had been one of the co-creators of the Sunday Church of Club Uranus, where Jerome really had that platform. But preceding all of that, both Anthony and myself are from Cleveland, Ohio, and that's where Jerome was born, and that's where he was raised as well. And I knew Jerome in Cleveland, and he was still pulling this gender fuckery stuff, even when he was in Cleveland, pre-pandemic. And I'm not to say that the pandemic didn't do anything, but I think Jerome's inspiration for his kind of art, both the two-dimensional art that he did, and he actually first started making ceramics. So when he was in Cleveland in art school there, he actually made like sadomasochistic. He made a whole dinnerware set with sadomasochistic like dinnerware. So like forks that you would stick in your mouth that have blades in them. So when you pulled the fork out, it would like rip the top of your mouth off.
Barbed wire wrapped around the edge of the plate.
And
How old was Jerome at this time?
Well, this would have been his first years in college.
Okay.
Early 80s.
Yeah, really.
And in the early 80s, that's when I knew him, because I knew him at art shows, and actually I knew him at punk rock shows. So I distinctly remember Jerome at a place called Pop Shop, which was a basement club underneath a larger, more popular club. And the Pop Shop showed really underground bands. And they had a lot of punk bands in the early 80s into the mid 80s. And I don't know how Jerome got a cage in there, but he had a full life-size stand-up cage that he brought in and hung from the ceiling. And he danced in that shredded hosiery wear with these chicken feet earrings and that long hair, and he was just the same spastic dancer that he would do his dancing like he did at Club Uranus. And I gotta tell you, he was the most fucking punk rock person there that whole night, because the so-called real punks, they didn't know what to do with him.
No.
They just didn't know what the fuck was going on. But even pre Club Uranus, there was called Haagen-Dazs. And that was actually the first kind of club platform that Jerome was able to, he was just dying to do this kind of stuff. And obviously he moved here, and I moved here a few years after that during the AIDS pandemic. And I think artists were just dying, use the phrase there, but to just express gender fuckery and themselves in a way that was no bars, no hold. What do they say, that expression? No hold bars.
Hold bars.
No, yeah.
It was like
From wrestling.
You just put it out. And Jerome was sort of like, he was doing that before, but he was almost like an inspiration in a way for other people that just joined in the ring and did it. Club Uranus was a pretty interesting little side note, and yet kind of a little bit important too back in the day, because in 1988, my first job when I moved to San Francisco was working at the Haagen-Dazs that was at 18th and Castro, right next to what was called the Elephant Walk, which is now Harvey's. And I was there long enough that, and the owners trusted me, that they made me the shift supervisor at night when the owners left and the manager left. And eventually they had hired another guy named David Johnson, who now lives in New York. And we were sitting around and we're like, God, this is kind of like, kind of boring. And I actually think it was David that said, we should have a club here. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. You got the keys and you're going to close up. Let's just have a club. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's have a club. So there was, every month for the summer of 1988, we had Club Haagen-Dazs, and Jerome was one of the stars. Now, Miss Bob, you mentioned Tippy.
Yes.
Tippy performed at the last Club Haagen-Dazs, and she would be on that other, the white one, the white flyer. Tippy's name is on there, right there. You can see
right there.
Philip R. Ford. So the Popstitutes played Philip R. Ford. Tippy was a dancer that was dancing with Philip R. Ford. You can see Jerome's name right under that. And Miss Gimme. Miss Gimme is the Rena McDonald or Adam Klein that Anthony had mentioned in that one
In that work.
painting.
Yep.
So before she was Rena McDonald, she went by Miss Gimme, and she performed there that night. And that was a notorious night. That's the night that got me fired. That's the night.
Who's Jaws?
I don't even remember who Jaws was. I don't remember. But at that last show, Margaret Cho was in the audience. She used to come to me. She was, little small Asian woman that was there in the audience, and she loved it. But Jerome did every single one of the Club Haagen-Dazs, and he loved it. I made an ice cream sundae once while he was dancing on the counters in plastic pants with a plastic octopus over his crotch. I made an ice cream sundae in his pants.
Who ate it?
I mean,
Who ate it? That's what I want to know.
what's that?
Who ate it?
Oh, you know what? I stuck an ice cream bar. I pulled out an ice cream bar, took the packaging off and handed it to Jerome, and he shook his head no, and he turned around, bent over, and stuck his ass in my face. I'm like, okay, well, I'm like, okay, so I stuck that ice cream bar up his ass, like fucking him with it. And then, he turns around, he snatches it out of my hand, and he eats it gleefully. I mean, with that
my gosh.
round smirk on his face.
I'm so glad we don't have any censorship laws right now.
You know what, Ramon? I am too.
Ramon, I want to share this one image. This is a total treasure, and nobody has ever seen this. And it's this last image here, and I'm just going to let Stephen kind of talk a little bit about this.
So there was a guy named Michael. I can't remember what his last name was. He wrote for I think he wrote for the Chronicle. He did. He wrote for the Chronicle. But he loved Jerome, and he loved the Club Haagen-Dazs things, and he liked me. And he invited Jerome and I to come down and do part of the Sunday magazine for the Chronicle. And they were doing a little spread on these Halloween ties, and I think there were earrings that we got on too for a company. And so we went down for a day and got us all dolled up in our Halloween gear, Jerome and I, and then they did the photo shoot, and it was wonderful doing that with Jerome. We both had a lot of fun.
Yeah. I just thought it was really a lovely image. We just came up on the anniversary of Jerome's death. He died on November 3rd. And just prior to the anniversary of his death, we had All Hallows Eve, All Souls Day, and Day of the Dead. So we had these kind of three lovely holidays just before the anniversary of Jerome's death. And I thought this picture kind of really encapsulated like Jerome on Halloween with Stephen.
Yeah.
That's great. That's amazing photograph. I mean, it really is amazing. So, Miss Bob, is that for images, Stephen and Anthony?
Pardon me?
Yeah, we could take these images. You could take these images off if you want now. Yeah.
And then you have a little more to share.
If you want to see a few more, I have a couple more just lovely photos of Jerome if you want me to share those, I can go get
Miss
those.
Bob, do you have other images as well, or is?
I sent Lee a series of
Oh yeah,
images.
you did too.
There they
So,
are.
should we? Go ahead.
I didn't think that Anthony and Stephen were finished yet,
No,
but
I
I
know.
the ones you're
I was
ready.
just wondering. Stephen and Anthony, should we go ahead with your images next?
Sure, you can. We just have a
That's
couple
Greg
more.
Taylor.
Yeah, we have a couple more images here. This is a really great picture of Jerome, again, doing kind of genderfuck drag, where you can kind of see his junk is kind of like practically hanging out of his little panties. And this is Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor is someone who Jerome collaborated with quite a bit. And Greg Taylor emceed some of the Miss Uranus pageants. So we have this lovely photo. Here's also a great photo of Jerome and Miss Kitty and Arturo. So three, really amazing queens.
Does anybody remember what Miss Kitty's full band's name was? Quiz.
Ooh.
I don't know
Miss
that one.
Bob.
I'm drawing a blank. I know it was Miss Kitty. I know it was Miss Kitty Litter and Birdie Droppings.
Miss Kitty and the cutout recipes.
Oh, right. I've forgotten the name of the bass player.
I love that.
This is a photo that a friend of mine took, and this is Jerome in what I call poultry drag. And you can see he made a little brassiere out of like rubber sunny side up eggs, and he also used a lot of these eggs on his little skirt. And a lot of this stuff ends up making its way into actual paintings. So these drag outfits, Jerome would deconstruct these outfits, and you'll see a lot of these rubber eggs in a lot of Jerome's paintings. And I believe this was taken at one of the street fairs.
That's great.
And then this is
Wonderful.
this is one of my favorite series of images. Anna Vondermeulen, one of Jerome's best friends. She still lives in Cleveland. She was the one who worked really close with Jerome, getting all of his affairs in order. She was taking care of the estate and really just helping Jerome. She was responsible for getting him into the Smithsonian Archives of American Art. She's the one who kind of picked up the phone and got a hold of them and really helped shepherd and worked with Jerome to get his stuff into the Smithsonian. And she did multiple photo shoots, and Jerome would perform in drag for her. And this is from some 35 millimeter slides that she donated to the archives. And I adore this piece. I just think it's just such a lovely, colorful triptych that really kind of captures Jerome in his scary drag. I think we can take these off, Lee, if you want.
I heard Tippy. I don't know whether this was her own personal nickname for Jerome or whether the whole Sluts A Go-Go milieu that she was a part of used it, but she used to call Jerome Miss Cootie. And
that's the first I've heard of it.
I don't remember. I don't even remember that, because Tippy was so quiet at every time that I saw her performing or doing something. She was always pretty shy, she seemed.
Oh, she was incredibly shy. She was her shyness paralyzed her, but it's also part of why she enjoyed performing so much.
Yeah.
Because when she was in a show, the boundaries are very clear. All of her friends were on stage with her, and all the people she was shy, afraid of, they were on the other side. They were in the dark. So her timidity inspired her performing. It really was part of the same thing. Tippy was, I think it may have been John Carr's obituary of Tippy that talked about how she was kind of under Doris's wing. Doris was an extremely dominant personality, and Tippy and Doris were roommates. And really, Tippy needed Doris. Tippy needed someone to be the adult. She really Doris called her the world's oldest living child star in captivity.
Yeah, exactly. I would totally agree.
Yes, so that really was who she was. And Doris was very, very strong. Doris was confident. Doris had a great deal of skills, and she brought this group together around her, which kind of gave, they were all a vehicle for her to perform. Philip Ford, who made the movie Vegas in Space, Tippy, who was the ingenue, Miss X, who sang. You know, if X once said that if Doris could sing, she wouldn't need me. It's very interesting to have Doris, for me, to have Doris juxtaposed against Jerome, because where Jerome is so into a front, so into in your face, or should I say that, in your face, Jerome is so much like that. And the drag is really, genderfuck is a great term for it, but that's not what Doris was doing. Doris was doing glamour. Doris called her makeup and her paintings and her work the Hollywood version. It wasn't there, unlike Jerome, there were no seams showing. It was all supposed to be as flawless as a Hollywood movie. Glamour for as Princess Angel says in Vegas in Space, glamour first, yep. Glamour last, glamour always.
There you go.
Doris also had a career, besides as a prostitute. Doris had a career as, quote unquote, the greeting card queen of America. She made dozens upon dozens, perhaps over 100 greeting cards for a company called West Graphics. Mm-hmm. She did all kinds of different, it's a panorama of different styles, and this is a very good example. It's one of my favorite cards from this, of all of them. Obviously, it's for Christmas, and it's Marilyn Monroe as an angel. Doris could make her face look like damn near anybody, and she really looks nothing like Marilyn Monroe, except here.
Yep.
The other thing about this card that's particularly interesting is the angel pops out, so you can hang it from your tree if you wish. Doris and auditioned, oh God, this is probably in the early 80s. Doris auditioned to be one of the go-go dancers for the Tubes when they did a European tour. And they took two go-go dancers, one of whom was Pearlie Gates, who, and the other was Doris. And to hear Pearl tell it, they got pretty bored, you know, go-go dancing for the Tubes night after night after night. And one of the ways they kept themselves amused was Doris would, when they got to the dressing room, Doris would say to Pearl, okay, who do you want to look like tonight? And then Doris would do Pearl's makeup to make her look like Marilyn Monroe, or I'm sorry, I'm not very good with thinking of old movie stars on the spur of the moment. But that was the image. Doris really had great control and facility. Do you have the one that one? Do you have the portrait of Doris that she did of her self-portrait? One more. There it is. There's not a hair, there's not a line that's not where she wanted it. It's very, very clear. Doris had a friend whose name I'll come up with later, who told me that when Doris was in art school, which was in the 1970s back in Sydney, on Australia, everybody was doing op art and hard-edged work and things like that because, hey, it was the 70s. Doris was painting portraits, usually in a kind of 1930s style, and usually of herself. I know, and every portrait I've ever seen of that Doris has painted, whether it's herself, whether it's a group of people, whether it's her and Miss Aboud, everybody's in drag. The whole world, Doris would put the whole world in drag. There's only one exception that I know, and that is, I believe, the last painting she painted. It was of her boyfriend, Marcel, who was a big fan of Elizabeth Taylor. And it was Marcel standing next to Elizabeth Taylor. And he, of course, was in a suit. He was accompanying her. But other than that, everything I've seen of Doris, and I've seen dozens and dozens of pieces, everyone is in drag. It's funny. This one. I put this one up because this too is a miniature like Jerome would have painted. And the frame probably came from the same thrift stores that Jerome and Kitty bought their work at. Thrift Town on Mission Street, was it 18th, I think? Tippy asked, while they were doing Vegas in Space. Now, doing Vegas in Space, doing the movie, was a long process. I believe it took 8 years to make that film. Somewhere along the way, early in the process, Tippy asked Doris to paint her a portrait of her character, Princess Angel. And so she could use it for her character study. And this is the miniature that Doris painted of Princess Angel. This isn't Tippy. This is Princess Angel as she would really look. This is the person, or fictional character, if you will, that Tippy would represent in the movie. I think we have another. Oh yeah, animation. Okay, Doris doodled. She doodled incessantly, especially when she was talking on the phone. And this is a doodle that I found in her flat. She made it while she was talking on the phone, just idly drawing away. And again, it's drag, right? And again, it's glamour. In many ways, I find Jerome and Doris kind of oil and water. Their styles really don't mix. And if you read Doris's column in the Sentinel, a defunct LGBT San Francisco weekly, you'll find that she wrote a column called She Who Would Be Empress, which is about the time that Jerome and Greg Taylor interviewed to be the Emperor and Empress. They did an interview in front of the Imperial Court, or whatever collection of emperors and empresses were conducting the interview. And Doris wasn't really told while she was there. She didn't go in drag, though Pat Montclair, one of the former empresses, recognized Doris like that. And when the empresses asked for someone who would recommend and support, sort of be give a recommendation for her to be empress, she and Greg looked at Doris, who had no idea that that's why she had been asked to attend. Doris's description of Jerome at that event is priceless. And if you haven't seen it, please let me send you a copy, though the entire, I believe the Sentinel's on, the entire run is on the website of the GLBT Historical Society. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of mention of the pandemic. Of course, you mean HIV/AIDS, the pandemic of the 90s, not our current issues. And I was astonished to find out that, Anthony, you're such a filmmaker. Because I believe I had mentioned to you already that I'm taking my talk, Glamour, Drag, and Death, HIV/AIDS and the Art of Three Drag Queen Painters, and turning this PowerPoint into a short documentary film. Mm-hmm. and you can bet I'm going to be picking your brains, pal. I've never made a film in my life.
Get ready, it's a fun ride.
I've been writing grants for the past 2 weeks. My wheels are starting to turn.
Can I interject and say something? And you can
Please.
tell me if I'm wrong.
I'm
but
sure everyone's bored with me by now.
You said
No, go ahead.
you said that Doris and Jerome were like oil and water. But actually, I mean, the way that I see things on a broader thing, they both actually were doing the same thing in a way too.
How's that?
So as Doris maybe took the time, you said there was no hair out of place. I watched Jerome dress up and get ready. There was a lot of thought that went into what he did too. He just didn't throw stuff on and say, I'm done. It was intentional. All of it was intentional. It just didn't look pretty like Doris Fish maybe aspired to. He maybe had the opposite effect, but they were both working the same way. And the same way with the painting. Doris maybe had looked at the world and put everybody as a drag queen or in drag, and maybe that's the way Doris had painted the world. Jerome had his vision of the world, which was kind of, how would you describe the way that he saw the saints and the characters? They were all part of his vision of the world through a lens that blended the darkness of the world with humor.
Yeah, he took in a lot of like religious iconography,
Oh, yeah.
and then threw in some, you know,
Bozos, lots of
all
bozos.
kinds of like horror
Clowns,
and
yeah.
violence.
But also beauty, because he's using fingernail polish and makeup to create these vivid, beautiful colors. So it's this really great blend. But I think that they both had visions of the world that maybe put a lot of those characters in drag, but their own sense of drag was just one of glamour and one of, what's a good word for Jerome's, like glamour and
Scare.
non-glamour.
I want to piggyback what Stephen was just saying. I've got some amazing video that Anna filmed, a good couple months before Jerome died. And they're about to go out for like a night out in the town. And it's like a good hour and a half of Jerome getting ready. So, when he's putting on his makeup, even though it looks like a mess, he's got these Q-tips, he's licking the Q-tips. He is fussing over making sure that it's the right type of like off-kilter messiness. And sometimes he wipes the whole thing off and he'll start all over again. So there's a tremendous amount of like kind of care and thought. Just the end result didn't look glamorous. It was meant to look like it was just
Anti-glamour.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Anti-glamour.
It reminds me of the way I've heard people discuss Jackson Pollock's work, because it just looks like he threw the paint with no thought, with no concept. But if you've seen video of the man working,
Yeah.
you see that same kind of concentration and focus that you're talking about.
Yeah.
The other thing I found interesting, when I just thought of it, that Doris also had a great, not in her art, but this object behind me, this large, what I'm using for my vanity. The top part of it with a series of shelves.
Yeah.
There, that shelf, and then there's one above it. There's on the other side. Doris bought that, built a kind of shelf piece to be a stand for it, covered it with painted it, spray painted a whole bunch of doilies, and then glued the doilies on. That's where the gold comes from. and it was filled with Madonnas, statues of Madonna. She was living in the Mission, so it's pretty easy to find statues of the Madonna in the Mission. And she did it for when her mother came from Australia to help take care of her during her final several months, maybe as much as half a year. And she made it so she would have the Madonnas there when her mother arrived. Her mother was very religious. Doris was, I don't know, her attitude towards religion, but the iconography was so very important that they had that image there. Nothing like the way Jerome had Madonnas, like painted on condoms and such as that. This is a much more traditional and reverent approach to the Mother of God. But
Miss,
there are these strange parallels.
You mentioned the condoms. Jerome didn't just paint like, Madonnas and Virgin Marys on condoms. They were actually used condoms that had semen still inside them that he collected from tricks that he met. So it's not just condoms. there's a lot more inside and underneath a lot of those paintings.
How do you still have those in your archive?
I don't have a condom painting. I don't. No.
Speaking of things Jerome collected, I know that he collected toenail and fingernail clippings.
Mm-hmm.
And after Jerome died, Don Baird, who had a column in either the BAR or the Sentinel at one time, told me that he ended up with the gallon jar of them.
You know what? I don't know about that. We'll have to hit Don up and see if he's got that.
Something I intend to track down because it's mentioned in the narration for the movie, and I really would like to have a photo of that.
Yeah. I believe the toenail. Well, there's a really famous toenail painting that's in the collection for SF and MoMA, and it's called The Foot of Christ, and it has Jerome's toenail clippings that are in it, and you can access that painting on their website. It's on display, and again, it's called Foot of Christ.
I've seen it online. I want to not to ignore our chat, but I see Nalini's first question about the artists appearing in galleries.
Yep.
Doris did not do a lot of work in galleries. I know she was on a large show that Jerome was also a part of at Capricorn Asunder, the old San Francisco Art Commission gallery in the Civic Center. But the one thing that struck me about Jerome when I got a chance to spend some time with him was Jerome was a serious artist. Jerome took his art very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And
can I piggyback off of that?
I was hoping you would.
You had mentioned earlier about this kind of shy side to a lot of these queens that, once they get a platform or a stage and they do their kind of little genderfuck performance. With Jerome, when Jerome was out of drag, and a lot of times, I would see him out and about, and he had his long blonde hair, and he would wear a wife beater muscle shirt, a wife beater, short sleeve white shirt, and kind of ripped up stonewashed jeans. Jerome always had his hands in his pocket, his head down, and he kind of walked real quiet. He looked like a wallflower. He would practically disappear. And there'd be several times that Stephen and I would be walking on the street and he'd be like, oh my God, look, there's Jerome. But you could barely see him, and we used to go up and talk to him. And it's just really interesting because he was very quiet. And I didn't realize why his head was down. I always thought that he was kind of shy or embarrassed. And it was the exact opposite. What he was doing is he was looking for stuff in the streets. Bottle caps and trash. His head was down, but he was scanning like the next thing to paint on. And as far as the seriousness, Jerome knew the value of his art. And as far as like Jerome's chosen family, Jerome's chosen family, it's Rembrandt, Dali, Picasso, it's all these amazing master painters. And Jerome was very serious. He was painting every day for hours and hours and hours. You know, he'd go to the clubs, he'd perform. You know, the clubs would close. He'd go to Golden Gate Park, or he would go to Collingwood Park. He'd trick. Then he'd come home at 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning. But then he would paint up until noon, and then he'd fall asleep, get up again, do the same thing. But he was always painting. He was on the bus, on Uni. He had his materials with him. He was nail polished because he didn't have to clean the brushes, and he could be on Uni and pull out these little paintings. You know, he had paintings that were very, very small. Some of them like the size of like a postage stamp. You can see that. And so he would pull these out, and he would just constantly be working on his art. So, you know, as far as seriousness, that's like, that doesn't even do it justice. I mean, he painted, there's thousands of paintings that he made. And he painted up until he died. You know, when he was really sick towards the last couple months of his life, he had CMV retinitis. He was losing his eyesight.
Right.
But even that didn't scare him. It didn't stop him from painting. And if you look at a lot of his paintings, a lot of the stuff that he painted in the last couple months of his life, it became very kind of flat and more two-dimensional. But he was still painting right up until he died. And there's a lot of art out there. There's a lot of collectors out there that have large collections of hundreds of paintings in their collection. So you know, prolific like doesn't do justice.
How much art did Doris produce? Do you know? Like roughly, like.
No, because I know there are paintings and pieces in Australia that have never left, that are still there, that are there. There was a Doris too painted all the time, but it wasn't always artworks. She repainted and redecorated her flat, you know, maybe as much as twice a year. And we're talking about painting everything, multiple colors. You know, not the kind of thing like, okay, I'm just going to paint this wall green and paint the rest of them white. But, you know, there's a psychedelic influence. Where if you want to say there's a punk influence in Jerome, I believe there's a psychedelic influence in Doris. There's one Dan Nicoletta photograph of the two of them, Doris and Tippy, literally in hippie drag on Haight Street. Where else? But I see those kinds of colors, that kind of brilliant color choice of colors in Doris's work that reminds me of the 60s. So she did art a lot, but it wasn't always painting. She could build furniture. She had pretty good carpenter skills, and I remember when they were doing the Bad Seed in the basement theater at Theater Rhinoceros when it was on 16th Street, and they needed a couch, and they could not find a couch that would fit on that tiny stage. So Doris went to a thrift store and bought a dining room chair, one of like the chair you'd put at the head of the table with two arms, split it down the middle, separated the two pieces out, put plywood in between it, and upholstered it, and made it the couch that they used on the stage. And it took up what they needed. It took up virtually no room. It was just a big chair, but it gave everybody, all the characters, just a place to sit down together when they had those intimate conversations and delicate talks. And so Doris did a lot of art. I have a set of shelves that she made and painted that are really quite beautiful. With people like this, I think we're dealing with people who have to make art. They just have no choice. I remember I was taking a tour of a gallery in Philadelphia. They had an exhibit of Laurie Anderson's sculpture. This was in the 80s, kind of before Laurie Anderson was Laurie Anderson. And she has one sculpture that's you're supposed to lie down on a couch to see it, and it's a figure of her therapist looking down at you while you're on the couch. And I was taking it to her, someone in the audience, someone in the group, mature group, kind of laughed at it. And the docent turned around and said, yeah, but look, this is someone who has no choice but to make art, no choice but to take their experience and share it with others in this two-dimensional form. And I see that same impulse in both of the subjects of tonight's talk. You know, they just had, it was part of their DNA.
I agree. I mean, they had to build their own world and environment. They had no choice. I mean, that was how they expressed their art.
Right.
You know,
I wish I had that same drive.
Yeah, they weren't part of that whole traditional art world, so you know they had to create their own world and environment to
going to Doris's apartment was like going to her world. It was really a welcome to my world kind of experience.
Exactly. So I think there's one more question in that comment page from Nalini as well. It said, what was the other one there? Are there any artists today implementing the Genderf drag styles in their work?
Answer this one?
All yours, honey. All yours.
You know, there's an artist that's out there right now that I adore, and she goes by Christine, and it's ChriSteene. And just Google Christine and watch these videos. They're marvelous. And it's, you know, Christine is a true gender terrorist. And, you know, it's my friend Paul, who's the brains behind that, who's a total sweetheart, but just a brilliant artist. And probably the closest thing to, like, if I were to compare, like, anybody currently today to Jerome, it would be this drag artist, Christine. So
she's kind of like horror hillbilly drag.
Wow.
She writes all her own music, sings all of her own music, is a really serious actor, you know, a well-trained actor. But again, when you look at her, she looks like a mess on the street. She looks like yeah, just like a, you know.
Look around. Oh, there we go. Christine.
Wow. There we are.
Lee's got you.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. You rock.
Really? Well,
That's amazing.
I see the connection immediately.
Yes. Yeah. Very talented and very inspiring. You know, like one of the things that Christine does, which is also something very similar to Jerome, like underneath all of this scariness, you know, there's something positive that's going on. There's something really kind of like sweet. Like, you know, Jerome was one of those like queens on stage. You know, a lot of times you'll see these queens on stage and they'll kind of attack each other, attack each other's characters, and it's all in this kind of bitchy drag talk. Yeah. And it's really funny because Jerome did not have that kind of edge. It was never at the expense of someone's character.
It was playful bitchiness. It was never acerbic and truly mean.
No.
That's great.
But it was in your face.
Pardon me?
But it was in your face. It forced you. I felt it forced you to deal with Jerome.
Yeah, no, I would say it was not. I would say Jerome didn't know how to play that game seriously, and he wasn't probably very interested in it either. It wasn't part of the world he created for himself, which was really a playful, twisted world. He didn't want it to be what most of our world actually is rooted in, which is, you know, nastiness and backstabbing and trying to like be better than somebody else or something like that. No, he didn't really have that in himself.
Yeah. I'll say one thing. with regards to in your face, Jerome wouldn't say anything, but what he would do is he would just like tackle you and wrestle you and just go to town wrestling on a bar, and you just wouldn't expect it because you've got this tall, thin, frail man. And if there was a drag show going on and he was part of the pageantry of it and he was a judge on it, if he didn't like your act, he was right there kicking and pushing you off the stage and back into the audience. So like his kind of in your face, it wasn't done verbally cutting down on your character. It was very kind of playful to create like a form of entertainment in a really kind of fun-loving way. So I've got great video of Jerome booting queens off of the stage, and they're getting back on the stage, and Jerome is just doing everything to like keep them off the stage. So
See, we'd love to see that. We'd love to see that. But
yes, indeed. Can't wait for the film.
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So Lee, I think we're segueing over to you real quickly.
Yeah, I think
we missed you, lady.
I've been here sneaking around in the background, queuing things up for y'all.
Thanks for the skinny stuff. That was great.
We've got a couple minutes left for the program. If anybody has any last minute comments, or if anybody in the chat wants to add any last minute questions for everyone, I thank you all for telling your stories and showing the photos you have. And I really love that we've kind of, come to this theme of contrasting and also comparing the, kind of motifs of Doris and Jerome. And I think, y'all were trying to find kind of an antithesis to glam, to glamour. And I think one word that comes to mind to me when I look at Jerome's work is the grotesque, like in the medieval sense of being very, very concerned with the body and the physical attributes of like bodies doing things. And I see a lot of that in his work. And so I thought it was interesting. You could have, the dichotomy of glam and grotesque, which I think would be just a great name for a show.
Very well said.
And I see David Weissman asks if there's anywhere other than just the comments on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching, to make comments or questions. Nope, that's exactly where you want to go. So if you have a question for any of our speakers, feel free to pop it in there. While we're waiting to see if there's any other questions, do y'all have any kind of parting comments or things you want to mention to kind of
inspirational comments from our guests?
Yeah, I'd like to add something. When I started this journey making a film on Jerome, the main reason that I'm even doing all of this, it's like, Jerome kind of evaporated. Like, after he died, he kind of really just kind of disappeared into the woodwork. And I gotta tell you, as someone who kind of a survivor through 2 plagues now, but during HIV and AIDS, I just gotta say Jerome was that queen who, he was out in the world, he was public, and he was making all of us laugh, and laugh at a time when we didn't have a lot to laugh at. And I didn't realize the impact that Jerome had on my life until years and years later. That's the main reason why I created the Jerome Project, that I'm making a documentary film. I just feel like Jerome had so much life, and he burned through life brightly, and just had such a big impact on my life. And I didn't realize that until many, 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 many years later. So, a lot of this work that Stephen's doing, Stephen's been helping me out for over 10 years now. Stephen's been helping me out. It's been a huge support. And it's just finding stories, finding art, securing art, working with organizations like you guys, the GLBT Historical Society. there's so much more going on than just like my film, but at its core, it's just, what Jerome represents and what he means to me. This is like my gift to the world. It's a gift for everybody. They just need to know Jerome's importance, Miss Kitty's importance, Doris Fish's importance. It's like these pioneers in this kind of Genderf skag drag movement. I just think it's a powerful movement, and it got me to contribute and give back to the world. So,
It's a very beautiful tribute.
I agree that movement needs to be continued on, and this is why we have these conversations, because having been trained as the traditionalist art in the traditionalist art world, my perspective on queer art has really been turned over as I've joined the Historical Society in the last several years. There's that sort of kind of eye opener, kind of, come to Jesus moment. Not that I'm believing in that, but you get that come to Jesus moment, and there are these amazing artists that, by acknowledging this history and taking from it the things that serve us best, we hope to create a more loving future for ourselves, queer or not. You know what I mean? The community, our allies, I think is all important. So,
Well, it's
on that note,
when the movie's done, and even the people now that are becoming aware of Jerome because of Anthony's work with shining this spotlight on this artist. And he is appearing in books now, poetry books, and other pieces of work. It gives a kind of visibility,
exactly,
and a kind of an acceptance, or if you want to put it even in a, I hate to say it, in like a Facebook film, but in a like situation where a young person can see what other options they have. And whereas back in the day when Jerome was doing what he did, he didn't have all that social media. So it was all direct and organic. The experience was always organic. Now young people have to think a little differently, but once they realize that it's okay to step outside the box and create a little bit differently, that other people did it before them, and they were loved.
Miss Bob,
It's going to carry that torch to who knows where, but somewhere.
Miss Bob's work too, with just as the founding director of the Louise Lawrence Transgender Archives. I mean, that's a step up from where we are now. I mean, that's amazing. I salute that work. And
Thank you.
Why we have this sort of kind of collections that are so important now. It really is.
I think Stephen just hit on something which we missed earlier about Jerome and Doris, and that is bravery. That's the confidence to do and be who you are, and to put that out there for the world. I really think that of all the themes we've discussed, that may be one of the most crucial.
Yep.
So thank you for bringing that up. That's I think a very important point. And I'm so happy it wasn't.
Well, I think that is a wonderful place for us to close up and say goodbye for the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the three of you coming on tonight and just sharing everything and all of your wisdom and stories, and for giving me and Ramon an opportunity to just
our illustrious panel, the illustrious panel we have.
Yeah.
All I have to do is say thank you very much. I mean, this is definitely a privilege to have you all on the show, and thank you again. Thank you
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Is this the point where we all wave?
Well, sort of like this.
here.
And thank you to everyone who has been watching us this evening. Like we said, we do this program once a quarter, and we usually will do anywhere from 1 to 3 different programs every month. You can check out more of our programming that's coming up at glbthistory.org/events. We have a couple of other really exciting programs that are coming up this month, including a screening of a play that is about a lesbian Holocaust survivor named Margot Human. And then we also have a panel with several folks from Bay Area American Indian Two-Spirits to talk about their own experiences as being part of the Two-Spirit community, especially in honor of November being American Indian Heritage Month, as well as that week that's going to be on the 19th. It's going to be Trans Awareness Week. So we've got some fun programs coming up. I hope that you will join us for them. And as I mentioned, you can always hop on to our website and become a member and get fun perks and swag and get access to special events that'll be members and donors only. So again, I thank everybody for joining us tonight. I'm going to put up a little screen at the end here that will have a little link for a program feedback survey. So if you enjoyed the program tonight, you want to give us your feedback and let us know what other programs you'd like to see, go ahead and follow that link, and we'd really love to hear from you.
And I will be in touch with everyone soon.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
It's nice to see you.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you.